exactly 48 hours, the most catastrophic countdown in modern geopolitical history reaches zero. Picture this. It is 3 in the morning in the Strait of Hormuz. The moon is completely hidden behind heavy maritime fog. Suddenly, radar screens across the United States Fifth Fleet light up with hundreds of inbound signatures. This is the nightmare scenario keeping Pentagon planners awake tonight. The White House has just issued a final, non-negotiable deadline to Tehran. If Iran misses this deadline, the consequences will be devastating. But why did the administration choose this exact moment to force a military confrontation? And more importantly, what happens when the clock finally runs out? We are about to break down the exact military scenario that will unfold if diplomacy fails. You will see the strategic blueprint for a conflict that could freeze global trade in a matter of hours. According to recent reports from the BBC, the ultimatum delivered to Tehran is entirely unprecedented. The terms are absolute. Iran has been pushing a last-minute proposal through intermediaries in Oman to end the escalating shadow war. But the White House has warned that the deadline is final. There will be no extensions. There will be no secret back-channel negotiations. We are witnessing a staggering display of brinkmanship. The decision to issue a public, rigid timeline removes any diplomatic off-ramp for both sides. It is a formidable gamble. The administration is betting that the threat of overwhelming kinetic action will force a sudden Iranian capitulation. But there is more to this story. Tehran is not backing down. Instead, they are moving their most lethal asymmetric assets directly into position. Here is where it gets interesting. To understand what happens next, you have to look at a detailed map of the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow strip of water is the global economy's absolute jugular vein. It is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point near the Musandam Peninsula. But the deep water shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide in either direction. Through this tiny, highly vulnerable corridor flows 21 million barrels of oil every single day. That is roughly 20% of the world's total petroleum consumption. According to the Wall Street Journal, a total closure of the strait would immediately remove $47 billion of commerce from the global economy daily. It would trigger a catastrophic spike in energy prices worldwide. We are talking about gasoline hitting $8 a gallon in the United States within a single week. European markets would experience a crippling shock just as winter approaches. Liquid natural gas exports from Qatar would completely halt. And that brings us to the most critical point. Iran knows they cannot defeat the United States Navy in a conventional, symmetrical naval battle. They are not even going to try. The Iranian military doctrine is built entirely around asymmetric warfare and area denial. Their strategy is genuinely ingenious. They do not need to sink an American nuclear aircraft carrier to win this conflict. They just need to make the strait too dangerous for commercial oil tankers to navigate. Insurance premiums for shipping companies have already skyrocketed by 400% in the last 72 hours. If even one commercial vessel is struck by a mine or a cruise missile, the major shipping conglomerates will order an immediate halt to all transit. The strait will be effectively closed without a single American warship taking a direct hit. The psychological impact on the market is their primary weapon. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the timeline is everything. Let us look at what the first 24 hours of an armed conflict would actually look like. If the deadline passes without an Iranian concession, the United States will likely initiate a massive suppression of enemy air defenses. This is known in military terms as a SEAD mission. The objective is to completely blind the Iranian military infrastructure. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers taking off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri would strike early warning radar installations deep inside Iranian territory. At the exact same time, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft would flood Iranian communication networks with blinding static. The airspace would be saturated with hundreds of Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles. These would be launched from Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and Ohio-class guided missile submarines stationed securely in the Arabian Sea. The sky would literally ignite, but Iran is fully prepared for this exact opening move. In a statement published by defense analysts at the Institute for the Study of War, satellite imagery reveals a terrifying reality. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has spent the last decade burying their most valuable assets deep underground. They have constructed vast subterranean tunnel networks carved directly into the solid granite of the Zagros Mountains. These missile cities are specifically designed to withstand direct hits from heavy American munitions. They are housing thousands of Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles. These weapons are highly accurate. They carry devastating high-explosive warheads, and they are currently fueled and pointed directly at American bases across the Persian Gulf. They are ready to fire. And this is the part that changes everything. The United States possesses the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. It is a 30,000-pound bunker-busting bomb designed specifically for this terrifying scenario. It can penetrate 60 feet of solid concrete before detonating its massive payload. But delivering these massive weapons requires absolute air superiority. If the stealth bombers miss even a fraction of the underground launch sites, Iran will retaliate with a staggering, overwhelming barrage. They will utilize highly coordinated swarm tactics. Hundreds of explosive suicide drones, heavily modified versions of the Shahed 136, will be launched simultaneously from mobile truck platforms. They will be programmed to fly just feet above the ocean surface to evade radar detection. Their target will not just be American warships. They will intentionally target the vulnerable desalination plants and oil refineries of neighboring Gulf states. The regional infrastructure will burn. Defense analyst James Stavridis told military publications that the threat environment is far more complex than it was 20 years ago. The rapid proliferation of anti-ship ballistic missiles is a massive, immediate concern. Iran currently possesses the Khalij-Fars missile system. It is a solid propellant supersonic ballistic missile equipped with an advanced electro-optical seeker. It is specifically designed to track and hit moving vessels at sea with terrifying precision. The United States Navy's Aegis combat system is the most advanced missile defense network on the planet. But it has never been tested against a coordinated, multi-axis hypersonic swarm in a confined body of water like the Persian Gulf. If just one missile slips through the defensive screen, the loss of life would be catastrophic. The resulting psychological impact on the American public would be absolutely decisive. We will come back to the global economic reaction to this in a moment. But first, we need to address the hidden threat resting silently at the bottom of the sea. The Iranian Navy operates a massive, highly sophisticated arsenal of naval mines. Some intelligence estimates suggest they possess over 5,000 individual sea mines. These are not just the old floating contact mines from the Second World War. They possess highly advanced acoustic and magnetic influence mines. These weapons sit silently on the ocean floor for months. They wait for the specific acoustic signature of a massive oil tanker or an American destroyer to pass overhead before violently detonating. Clearing these mines is incredibly slow, painstaking, and dangerous work. It requires highly specialized minesweeper vessels and underwater unmanned vehicles operating in hostile waters. During the Gulf War in 1991, the USS Princeton, a billion-dollar cruiser, was severely damaged by an Italian-made mine. That mine cost less than $10,000 to produce. The return on investment for mine warfare is simply unprecedented. The math heavily favors the defender. But the naval threat goes far deeper than just static mines. The Islamic Republic operates a highly dangerous fleet of submarines perfectly suited for the shallow, noisy waters of the Persian Gulf. They possess 3 Russian-built Kilo-class diesel-electric submarines. When running on battery power, these vessels are practically invisible to passive sonar. They are armed with heavy wake-homing torpedoes designed to break the keel of a major warship, but the true danger comes from their fleet of over 20 Ghadir-class midget submarines. These tiny, highly maneuverable vessels can hide in the acoustic clutter of the coastal shallows. They are nearly impossible to detect from the air. They can lie in wait along the primary shipping lanes and launch ambush attacks on passing supertankers. The Iranian strategy is a terrifying mosaic of overlapping threats. It is a highly lethal web. This brings us back to the ultimatum itself. Why draw such an inflexible red line right now? According to geopolitical experts at Reuters, the administration believes the window to contain Iran's nuclear and regional ambitions is rapidly, permanently closing. The calculation inside the Pentagon is ruthless. They believe that short-term economic pain and regional instability are preferable to a future where Tehran possesses absolute nuclear leverage. But the strategic risks are astronomically high. If the initial military strikes fail to completely neutralize the Revolutionary Guard's command and control structures in the first wave, the conflict will immediately degrade. It will become a brutal, prolonged war of attrition. The United States could find itself dragged into another endless Middle Eastern conflict. And here is where the broader geopolitical chessboard comes violently into play. Russia and China are watching this specific countdown very closely. Beijing relies heavily on cheap energy imports from the Middle East to fuel its massive industrial base. A prolonged conflict in the Strait of Hormuz would be an absolute economic disaster for the Chinese manufacturing sector. But strategically, Beijing sees a massive opportunity. A major American military entanglement in the Middle East drains critical naval resources away from the Indo-Pacific theater. It instantly relieves pressure on China's aggressive territorial ambitions in the South China Sea. Moscow, meanwhile, benefits immensely and directly from any disruption to global oil supplies. A sudden, massive spike in petroleum prices directly funds the Russian war machine in Eastern Europe. Vladimir Putin has every incentive to see this crisis escalate into a full-scale regional war. They are profiting from the chaos. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the consequences of a strategic miscalculation are staggering. If the deadline expires and the United States launches a preemptive kinetic strike, Iran will almost certainly activate its vast proxy network across the region. Hezbollah in Lebanon possesses an estimated 150,000 rockets and precision-guided missiles. They would likely launch a massive, overwhelming bombardment against northern Israel to force a second major front. The Iron Dome would be completely saturated within hours. Houthi forces in Yemen would drastically escalate their attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea using anti-ship cruise missiles. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria would launch highly coordinated drone strikes against vulnerable American troop encampments. The entire region would instantly ignite into a multi-front war. Let us examine the economic contagion that would follow. The moment the first missiles are fired, the global stock markets will react with unprecedented panic. The Nikkei in Japan and the FTSE in London would see immediate historic sell-offs. The global supply chain, still recovering from recent disruptions, would fracture completely. Shipping conglomerates would reroute all vessels around the Cape of Good Hope. This adds weeks to delivery times and completely destroys just-in-time manufacturing models. The price of everyday goods in American supermarkets would surge. The resulting inflation spike would force central banks to raise interest rates to punishing levels. The conflict would trigger a severe, immediate global recession. This is the grim, unavoidable reality of the current situation. The diplomatic channels have gone completely, silently dark. The military assets on both sides are locked aggressively into place. The targeting coordinates have already been loaded into the guidance computers of hundreds of precision cruise missiles. We are witnessing the final, incredibly tense moments before a historic threshold is permanently crossed. The decision to deploy overwhelming force into this complex, highly volatile environment reveals a stark truth about the current administration's strategy. They are completely willing to risk a catastrophic regional war to re-establish a definitive global deterrence. The stakes could not possibly be higher. This situation is developing incredibly fast, with new military movements happening every single hour. We are monitoring the naval deployments and satellite imagery around the clock to bring you the absolute, unfiltered truth about this crisis. Hit subscribe now. Our next briefing will break down the exact tactical movements of the Fifth Fleet as the deadline expires, and you will not want to miss what our analysts have just uncovered about Iran's hidden submarine deployment strategy.